All right, peace, Africans. Hello, Zion. Welcome to the second National Black Radical Organizing Conference. Got to monitor that one. No, I think it's really great to see that. I think upward of 500 people registered. It's this many people that are coming together for the second attempt at this convening in this conference. We are hoping that this will not be the last one, but much of what we are attempting to do, which is a little different from the last time, we had a lot of plenaries. This time we are focusing on skill building. We are doing workshops around things that are needed, a priority, because there's a lot of conversations about the Black left and Black left unity. But I think what we're focused on this week is what does it mean to build that? What does it mean to sustain that? So I appreciate that you all have come and are ready to work.
All right. So we are so happy again to have you here. We are so happy to have you join us. This room it's full tonight. It'll be even more full tomorrow. And on Sunday, we're going to spend some time going over what to expect this weekend. But what we want to start with is making sure that we are here and that we do the work that we need to do to organize our community. But we want to start in the proper space by doing libations, all right? So we have Brother Elder coming up, Brother Amawala coming up to do libations for us to get us started in the proper way. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Well, I guess it's almost evening. I'll say good evening to you. Oh, come on, y'all do better than that now. Yeah, we got to have good energy. We got to have good energy. The energy that's in this room can be the nucleus of tomorrow. So we got to be right. So, libation is a very ancient ceremony, African ceremony. It's used to start any type of community event, large or small. And the purpose of libation is to invoke the presence of the ancestors in what we do. The ancestors are with us all the time anyway. So we might as well utilize that energy. And part of that is learning how to utilize that energy. So we have a lot of African traditions still alive in African American society. But if you don't know what the original traditions were, you have no way of knowing what's still alive and what's not. Libation is being kept alive in our society by one of the most unlikely groups that you may think of, the winos on the street. Before they open a bottle, a new bottle, they'll take the cap off, pour some on the ground for those of us who are not here. That's the ancestors. So we are African people that have been suppressed, but that's changing. This is a new year. This is a very special year, 2025. So let me get right to it. I'll salute the 6 primary directions, east, west, north, south, above, and below, and then say words to invoke the presence of the ancestors. Can you hear me now? Yes. I need both my hands.
No.
That's
No, we need it.
I salute you. Olorun Eladaro Gamani Mojiba. Olotu Oni Mojiba. Eladai Ye Mojiba. Please energize, refresh, revitalize the energy in, on, around this water in this ikeda with your divine ashe. So as I utilize them to pour libation, the energy of the libation may be pure, clean, refreshed, and revitalized with the energy of the ancestors. Ashe. Ashe. Only tutu, ona tutu, ina tutu. I salute you in the east. Ila autumn, el este, the direction in which you rise, Baba autumn. Bring the beginning of the day, the end of the night, a signal all in the universe is in order, everything is right. Bring your heat, your light, your fire to this day and this night. Ashe. Ashe. I salute you in the west. Iwa autumn, el oeste, the direction in which you set, Baba autumn. Bring the end of day and the beginning of night. Again, a signal all in the universe is in order, everything is right. Bringing the calm, cool, peaceful serenity of the night, allowing us to rise in the stars. Ashe. Ashe. I salute you in the north. Ariwa el norte, the direction in which the principle of living in the past, our history and ancestors. It is on their shoulders that we now stand. It is up to them to help us perpetuate our own selves into the future. Ashe. Ashe. I salute you in the south. Gumsu el sur, the direction in which the principle of living in the now, in the present. Everything is based now. Everything, the past has already happened. The future is not here yet. That's why we must always look to this day. For yesterday is already a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Ashe. Ashe. I salute you above in the Colio room, heaven, El Cielo, birthplace of the universe, home for which we all strive to return upon completion of our walks of destiny, toward our highest destiny. Bless us and protect us from above. May your blessings rain down upon us like a gentle shower, cleansing us, refreshing us, revitalizing us, energizing us. Ashe. Ashe. I salute you below in the Colio room, excuse me. The direction in which the principle of living in the now, and also the present, saluting the Mother Earth, who supports us all in everything that we do. Bless us and protect us from below. Ashe. 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 I've got a little prayer here for you that we'll do. And it's a prayer also to invoke the ancestors. Should have had it called up, but I didn't. So. Bless you. Yeah. Bless you again. Boy. In the name of Akamara, Olorun, Eladai, Olodamati, those are praise names for God in the Yoruba, who is within us all. May the wealth of all the good energies that Mother Earth and the universe provides flow to us to assist us in our healing. We request and accept the divine Ashe with gratitude and humility. We open our body, minds, and spirits to receive it. Beloved brothers and sisters of our planet, Mother Earth, may this power now reach and surround you. May every cell in our being, every thought in our minds be radiant with Ashe. Through our bodies, minds, and spirits, may there now flow to you the divine power and love of the universe. You are forgiven, for you were never condemned. You are healed. Now you will know your innocence. You are whole. You are healed. The Creator sees you this way. As we accept divine power, truth, love, and spirituality more deeply into our hearts, we accept for ourselves the divine vision for us. We see only our perfection in body, mind, and spirit. We see only your love. We will not see our past. We will not see our mistakes. We will not see our pain. We will not see our disease and suffering, but they have been cast out through the divine will of the Creator. Through the mercy of the owner of the universe, through the wonder of the universe, which loves us all and gives new life, may you be blessed and renewed. Beloved brothers and sisters, you are healed, you are whole. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Oh. Thank you very much. Peace and blessings.
Thank you so much, Baba. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. So we want to start with some logistics. First of all, for those who are in need of childcare, this brother back, Jordan, who's raising his hand in the back, we have a room available with games, toys, adults. So if anyone is in need of that, just please let us know. We wanted to start the first day by telling you so that folks could, if they wanted to have their kids go to the back, then he could take them to the child care room. So please, again, Jordan, raise your hand. The brother in the white t-shirt. Later on, he's going to be hosting a workshop because they have a school called the Malcolm X Academy, and it's a really great school. So this brother, your kids are in good hands. 2 is logistics. Somebody left that phone. So just want to let you know. Oh, that was you. That's you with your hand up. All right. All right. So we got your phone. And somebody left your bag. Nobody went through it. All the pictures. Don't you worry about that. We had to figure out who it was. And then we got a bag here also. So just let you know at some point you can come over this side and we'll let you have that kind of stuff. We also want to thank all the sponsoring organizations, Community Movement Builders, Cooperation Jackson, National Black Liberation Movement, Black Men Build, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, the Black Alliance for Peace. Can we please give it up for all the sponsoring organizations? We also want to thank the Black Affairs Hub of Butler University for helping to co-sponsor and making us get this great space. So again, we hope this weekend will be fruitful. The purpose and reason why we're here, we want to go into a little bit more detail about that for everybody, right? So we all know that we are organizers and activists. We are thinkers. We are intellectuals. We're people who want to liberate our folks. But we cannot do that by ourselves. We have so many different formations, but those formations do not work closely together. They do not share analysis. They do not share programs. They do not share organizing campaigns the way we need to share if we are serious about liberating our people from this empire called the United States. So we want to bring our folks together to have conversations, to discuss, to debate, to hear and gain new knowledge about what it is that's happening in our communities and what is our role as frontline organizers to not only defend our community, not only to protect our community, but to liberate our people in our community. You are here for that purpose. You're not here to talk about the rooms. If the rooms are not sufficient, You're not here to worry about if the transportation was on time, if the food does not fill you up. We are sorry for all of that. But we are grassroots organizers. We must take the petty bourgeois out of our organizing. And what we want to do here this weekend is to dig deep into conversations that matter to our community and should matter to us. So again, we're going to go over the agenda, but I want to say quickly, right? We're going to start off, we want to talk about what is the conditions that our people are in. What led us to this moment where we have this white nationalist government that is back in power? Because we already know the white nationalists have always been in power, but the overt white nationalism that is resurfacing is something that we have to deal with, talk about, and analyze. After that, we want to get into what is it that we must do after we analyze the problem. So after we analyze the problem and understand the historical and material means that got us here, what are we going to do about it? And or as Lenin would say, what is to be done? So we are here to figure out what is to be done. You are here to figure out what is to be done. We are going to then break down into workshops and discuss things in smaller circles and smaller plenary sessions or smaller workshops so that we can discuss skill building and we can discuss campaigns. And then we're going to discuss, and I'm already getting into the agenda, so some of this is going to be good, so I don't have to go over it too much again. Then we're going to get into another plenary session on Sunday, which I consider probably our most controversial plenary session, in that we're going to talk about electoral politics. What is the role, if any, of electoral politics in the liberation struggle? Is there a role? Do we need it or do we not? If we do participate in it, then what are we trying to gain from it? So we want to have a deep discussion with people who've been on the front lines of that struggle, but have yet kept themselves involved in either grassroots work or overt Black liberation work. And then, as folks always talk about, when I come to a conference, it's just a conference. What are we going to do after the conference? Why are we just coming to a conference? I'm tired of the conference, right? We all do that at the conference, even though we spend all our time networking and talking and all that kind of good stuff. So what we want to do, this is an attempt, right? It may be a miss, but we're making the attempt. We're going to break down into smaller groups with themes like mutual aid and community self-defense and electoral politics and grassroots organizing and human rights, working on human rights themes. And we're going to say, if we have discussions around what work we are doing as individual organizations and individuals ourselves in those settings, then what is it that we can do together on a national basis? So the idea is to begin the discussion, to report back, for people to put their names down, to say, I want to do the follow-up after this conference so that we can keep working together. That is the primary purpose, and I'll wrap with this part, that if we leave here and don't work closer together, we are basically allowing our community to be murdered and killed. And I want to be real about that because it's in your hands. You are the organizers. You are the radicals. You are the revolutionaries. You are the abolitionists. You are the people who have read and studied and understand what empire is, what white supremacy is, what capitalism is. You have to be a part of that, the leadership of that. You have to get our larger community involved in that. It doesn't go anywhere if it doesn't start in this room today at this particular time to say, how do we make it stronger than what it was before? The white nationalists are organized. Are the Black nationalists organized? Are the Black radicals organized? Are the Black abolitionists organized? Or are we fighting and debating and discussing and cursing each other out and arguing with each other over petty things that have nothing to do with our community? We have to get it together. And the hope tonight is that this is the very beginning of us getting it together. So I want to thank you so much for coming out, for spending your resources, for coming out here, spending your time. Remember to network, get to know people, get to see what's happening around, and make friends, allies, comrades, and let's get the work done. Thank you so much.
He's so hyped. Yeah, well, with all that said, as now that we know what we're going to do, just a bit of the why. We have come together to do it. If you have your programs, I'm just going to read just an excerpt from the program on the grounding our purpose. So the Second National Black Radical Organizing Conference, is an attempt, as many have done before us, to create a space to discuss, debate, train, assess, and create a collective way forward for Black, African, New African organizations and organizers who believe that our struggle for self-determination is paramount to our survival. So we understand that without organized political power, we will not collectively achieve affordable housing, an environmentally sustainable planet, life-affirming education, land sovereignty, food justice, and the other things that we're organizing around. So we do not look to be integrated, assimilated, or incorporated into America, or rather the US, but to liberate ourselves from it by any means necessary.
That's right.
I mean, y'all could do a little better. Y'all can be a little more excited about that. And then our stated objectives. So when we came together to plan this out, some of the things that we wanted to make sure that we accomplish is the bringing in and developing more organizers for our organizations. We always say, join an organization, fight for your people, where we're bringing the organizations right to you. There's tables outside, go learn about them, go see what we're about. Many of these organizations are running workshops, sign up for them, see what they're talking about. Build a Black left. And I say that constantly because we talk about a left, but I think we talk about it in such elusive ways because it is not existing. And our organizations stand as a way to make it exist. What we are doing is building a Black left. We are in that process. And this conference is one of the steps to do it, or how we see one of the steps. And then join regional and local organizing efforts. So there are campaign workshops, and that means these are existing campaigns. So when you are going into those workshops, or that's a workshop that you're taking, when you leave from here, see how you can tap into that campaign. Don't just learn about it here and then go home and don't think about it no more. If you are going to take these workshops that are campaign driven, think about while you're here, how can we apply this to where I'm at? I'm not in an organization yet, but I know these things are going on. How do I apply these campaigns? How do I mobilize around this? How do I get the first step? So that's much of why we're here, is to activate and to mobilize and to build so that when we leave here, we're in a better position to organize for that political power that we're seeking. I think that's it for me. Yeah, we went over. All right, I'll do that. All right, so he went through, Kamal just went through much of what we're going to be talking about, but I'll do it in a little more detail. Tonight is our opening plenary with Dr. Sharice Burton-Stelly, Derica Purnell, Dr. Umoja, and it will be facilitated by two Black. Oh, yes. Malika's here as well.
Malika, yes.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, Malika. And they're going to be talking about what time is it. So they're going to discuss the current conditions facing Black African, New African people, both here in the U.S. and abroad. So some of the questions that they're going to be thinking through, are we entering an overt phase of fascism? Is Jim Crow returning? You know, some of the things that we are seeing on the news, they're going to kind of be thinking through that with us. Tomorrow, Saturday opening plenary is what is to be done. Speakers are Ajambo Baraka, Ashaki Binta, Ashanti Alston, and myself, and it'll be facilitated by Randall Carr. And we will be exploring how we should be organizing as Black African, New African people in the US and worldwide to build or rebuild that Black left. And then our closing plenary on Sunday, it will feature Brother Jihad, Roger Evans, Charles Barron, Inez Barron, Dr. Melina Abdullah, and it'll be facilitated by Kamal Franklin. And they are going to be talking about the electoral strategy that is left of the Democrats. So they will be exploring recent attempts to organize a national local electoral strategy to support the movement building.
So before we bring in, or as we maybe have our panelists come to the stage, we can do that. So if you're a panelist on this panel, please come to the stage and make your way to one of the seats. Even if there's one without a mic, we'll pass the mics when we're done. We want to make sure no Black Radical Conference could call itself a radical conference if it didn't talk about its political prisoners, political exiles, its former political prisoners, the people who have struggled for us and with us, right? In fact, in the room tonight, we have folks who have been political prisoners. We have veteran Black Panther Party members. We have veteran members of SNCC. We have members of the Black Liberation Army. So can I ask those folks to please stand up for a quick second, please? So it's very important that we recognize these folks, particularly these folks who were political and did actions that caused them to go to prison, right? That caused them to be captured and held hostage. But we also have people who became politicized in prison and also stepped up to do the dangerous work because they knew that's what had to be done. And so here in Indiana, you have the case of the Pendleton two brothers that stepped up when white racist guards were attempting to murder Black inmates. And those folks also need to be recognized the same way we would recognize a George Jackson, right? No, you give applause for that. That's right. So there's no way we could be in this state in Indiana and not get away with not only talking about the case, but making sure you walk away with more information than you ever thought you could get on the case. So we're going to do a film screening tomorrow so that you can have information, documentation about who these folks are, why they need to be supported, and added to the pantheon of political prisoners that we struggle around releasing and freeing. And then on Sunday, we're going to have a rally and demonstration for those who can stay around after the program is over. Then we're going to have a rally and demonstration to use the energy and the numbers that we have so that we can showcase that there is support for these folks because this state doesn't believe there is, right? And so we have to be the ones to show them that there is support for them. Am I right? Yes. All right. So without further ado, I want us to get started. I want to thank Brother Two Black for stepping in and facilitating this. I also individually, I do a lot of things behind the scenes. This conference would not have happened without the work and labor of this brother. So he needs to be recognized as well as all the organizations, but he needs to be recognized for his special and deep input into making this happen. So I just want to thank him in particular, and I want to turn it over to you to get things started.
This working? Good. How y'all doing? Good, good, good. I don't know how we got y'all to come to Indiana, but thanks for coming. Uh, before we get into this, I do want to give it up for Kali Akuno, who could not make it. He fell ill, but he's recovering. But I definitely want to give it up for him. So I just want everybody to keep him in your thoughts. All right, so this panel is called "What Time Is It?" Our host already kind of went over it, but we're gonna just open the conversation. I do want to introduce everybody here. I know you've already hopefully read the panel. If you look, there's a QR code on one of the pages where you can read their full bio. If I read everybody's bio, we wouldn't have any time to talk because these are such well-accomplished people. So I'm going to read briefly everyone's bio. Everybody give it up, and then we're going to have our opening questions. Is that good with everybody? All right, great. All right, so to my right is Malika Jabali. She is the author of It's Not You, It's Capitalism. Please check that out. She is a journalist and author whose writing has appeared in The Guardian, where she is you don't work at Essence anymore, do you? Yeah, she used to be at Essence Magazine. This bio is a little outdated. Yeah, it served its time. And she served as senior news politics editor at Teen Vogue, The Nation, and New Republic. So give it up for her, please. Next is Dr. Umoja, also known as Baba AK. Give it up. He is the author of the book We Shoot Back. We Will Shoot Back, excuse me. And that book, and all the books of these authors are for sale. We have a few for sale after this talk. If they'll stick around, they can also sign them for you. So just want everybody to know that. He is a scholar, activist, professor of Africana Studies at Georgia State University. He currently teaches a course on reparations and guides students in research for local and national reparations efforts. So give it up for him, please. Oh, and give it up for Malcolm X Grassroots. He's also a member.
Gotta do that.
Yeah, none of us are here by ourselves. All of us are in some kind of organization. That's how you get on stage. All right. Next is my former colleague, used to be a producer of the show, Dr. Sharice Burden Staley. Another bio that is rich. I'm gonna just read some of the books. She is the editor of Organized Fight Win, Black Women Communist Political Writings and Reproducing Domination on the Caribbean. Also, people I hope have all read it. If not, you should go get it. Black Scare, Red Scare. And she says she is a critical Black studies scholar of political theory. I'm going to read it. Political economy, intellectual history, and political and historical sociology. So give it up for her, please. She's also, I'm going to just keep shouting out, she's also the host of The Last Dope Intellectual. I got you. That's the show I was on. Now that I've left, it's Life Study Revolution with Dr. Layla Brown. Give it up for Dr. Layla, too. And that is on Black Liberation Media. That is hopefully currently streaming. You can check that out. And our show, Black Miss Podcast, is on there as well. All right. We're going to get them all in. All right. Lastly, we have Derica Purnell. She is the author of Becoming Abolitionist, Police, Protest, and Pursuit of Freedom. It says she is obsessed with love and liberation. She seeks both, all in that she does, especially as a writer, organizer, cultural worker, movement lawyer, and friend. So give it up for her, please. Yes. All right. I'm just gonna start. I'm gonna just try to carry on what Kylie already wrote out. So this question, I'm going to come just right to my right here. I'm gonna start here, and we can just kind of work down the line. So the question is, what is your assessment of the state of Black/New African people in the U.S. empire today? What is the assessment of our conditions, what we're facing, and what time are we living in? How can we understand those historical conditions and not just think about things as a kind of anachronistic history, but what are the material conditions we live in today? What is your assessment of those conditions?
Okay. Well, before I get into my answer, I just want to say how much of an honor it is to be on this stage, to be with these beautiful sisters. Don't we look great? And our elder, Baba AK. I've seen these sisters through social media, through Essence interviews, through virtual media. I have not seen y'all in person, so it was a pleasure to be here with y'all and to be here with Baba AK, because I grew up in the New African Scouts. I was a part of the Malcolm X grassroots movement, and because of Baba AK and so many of our elders like Kamal Franklin, I see Brother Watani in the audience as well. A lot of us are here today. I'm here on this stage literally because of that political consciousness that you brought into our consciousness, into our development. By being a New African Scout, I am able to be who I am, to be able to speak to our people. And so a lot of that work, it might feel like it goes out into the ether, but it is grassroots, and we are the fruit of that. So I am so thankful for you for being a part of my life. So thank you, and give it up to all of y'all for being here.
Yes, yes.
What time is it? What time is it?
Nation time.
Okay, I had to do a little temperature check, see where we were. So it's been nation time for a lot of us, probably for most of our lives, but a lot of our people are not on that type of time. So you ask us, what time is it? That's the title of this panel. Where are we at as a people? A lot of us are not thinking about this stuff. A lot of us are so busy trying to navigate a colonial capitalist system that we don't even have time to think about what time it is. We're so busy working. And the way that our system has developed, especially if we think about coming from, we're looking at the historical context of so many of our conventions and our congresses, 1972 in Gary, Indiana, right here in Indiana, we had a lot of our people who had the ability, they had the time to come together and even think about these issues, to come with an agenda. But when we look at what capitalism has done to us, the fact that a lot of us have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make the same kind of wages, the fact that you can still work and you may not get benefits, the fact that union labor is down, the fact that we're doing temporary work. We don't even get benefits. We don't get health care. So many of our people are just struggling with the day-to-day that it's difficult for us to organize. And so I think this kind of convening is so crucial for us to take the time out, because we are within that system. We have to operate within that framework as organizers, as activists, as scholars, as journalists. I have to navigate, can we even talk about Gaza? People are getting fired. There's so many things that are targeting Black radicals that it's even more difficult for us to organize in the same way. So that's the scary hours, right? We've got a lot of folks, again, are not on that type of time. I think more of us are busy line dancing than organizing. And mind you, I'm Southern. I'm okay with the line dance. I learned a new one about 2 weeks ago, but we're not organizing enough. But the fact that we are still standing here, that we are still here, despite all the propaganda, despite all the pain, despite the ways that we have been targeted violently and suppressed as a people, and that we are still here, that Baba AK is still here, that New African Scouts are still here, that's a testament to our resilience as a people and as Black radicals. So there are some positive things in the midst of the pain.
Yeah, give it up.
Man, first of all, I would like to say in name of our mothers, fathers, all of our ancestors, I'd like to say to you on behalf of the New African People's Organization, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, free the land, free the land, free the land, free the land, by any means necessary. Like Malika, I'm certainly honored to be here, and I guess I'll be the elder representative on the panel. And I have everything you do, I'm proud of you, because I have known her since she was elementary school age, and her mama taught my son. So it's kind of full circle. And I haven't had the pleasure of meeting our sister here, but Sharice, I've known since she was in graduate school, and just very proud of her development. And of course, thanks to the organizers of this conference for inviting me and bringing me here. Man, where are people at right now? That's a complex question. It's one really deserving of a whole conference. And you know, given what Malika said in terms of the material conditions of our people was important, but there's another element that I think we have to talk about, and that's where we're at in terms of our consciousness as a people. When we look at a lot of the diversions, I happened to, on preparation to come here, I didn't want to look too ugly, so I went to the barbershop yesterday to get my beard trimmed. And especially for brothers, a lot of times, and I assume for sisters going into the beauty shop, you can get a pulse of where a lot of our people are at, not just from the customers, but from the barbers themselves. People prone to conspiracy theories, people prone to a lot of misinformation that's out there. So when we talk about our people's consciousness and we talk about the state of Black radical organization and organizing right now, one of the things that our people lack is from our perspectives, our points of view. They ain't hearing about them. Because why? Because we ain't with them. You know, I told somebody, one of my elders told me years ago in reading Vladimir Lenin, and he said, Lenin said, don't blame the masses for your own backwardness. Okay, so Kamal talked earlier about us organizing folk, but us being present with folks. We do a lot of dialogue, but a lot of times we're not touching folks in our communities. We're not touching our neighbors. We're not touching the folks that Malika was saying that are being most impacted by the drama that's going on. You know, one of my friends, Sundiata Chajua, yeah, you said, oh, you got a fan over here. Okay. Sundiata told me he told me last year when the Amazon strike was going on and others, he said, and probably the exception to this might be the Black Workers for Justice. But he said, what Black left organization has made a statement about it? Which one of us, and this includes mine, which one of us are in touch with that situation? Of course, many of us are engaged with our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated, you know, but we got to be serious and look in the mirror in terms of where we're at as a people. Excuse me, as Black radicals. We got to get off, and I love social media. I love it. You know, I'm addicted to it too, like the rest of y'all. I'm gonna be honest. I look at YouTube every now and then, I check and see what they doing with Puff. It's so salacious. It takes the place of the soap opera for a minute. Okay, but I'll be honest. But we got to engage our folks more on day to day. Find out where they're at, you know, and just say for a second, I don't want to stay on the mic too long. I remember, as it was said, I have a class where we engage reparations. It's not just looking at all the theory and history of reparations, but the students actually have to work with some reparations organizations in the community, grassroots organizations. And so one organization wanted them to go to get people who've been impacted, because in the city of Decatur, which just a couple of weeks ago created a reparations task force and apologized to its Black residents, if that's important. But the organization in that community wanted people to get some of the residents who had been impacted by certain things. There had been a whole community called Beacon Hill that had been eliminated. And that ain't unusual. We've had communities and neighborhoods eliminated all across the US empire. So my students were trying to go door to door. And they said, we can't reach the people. I said, after COVID and after people being, what do you call it? Home invasions, they ain't apt to just let you come in their house no more. So you got to figure out where people gather and then get a bridge. But, you know, so we got to learn how do we engage our folks, you know, because things change. I remember I used to could go door to door. It might not be the same thing. When you knock on my door, who is it? You feel me? I ain't shoot. I might go bring something with me when I come to the door. If I ain't expecting you coming. So we have to relearn tactics. It can't just be all ideology, but it's gonna have to be how do we do some things to again reach out to our folks. And I stop right there. Free to land.
Free to learn.
I got one.
Oh, you got
This is your water. Hey, y'all. So I am here as a student. I have no answers. I have no solutions. I'm just trying to understand the problem. So bear with me as I just have some disjointed remarks. And I have a statement to read later. But what is the state of our people? It's really difficult. I struggled with preparing for this panel because I got my usual spiel that I give to, you know, academic handkerchief head, join an organization, political education, right? But you are the people already doing that. So I just feel like I'm telling you what you already know, right? But my sense of things in terms of where we are, we're disorganized. And nothing brings that into sharper relief than our fundamental inability to stop a genocide. We can't do shit. Nothing. We haven't stopped a weapon, right? We haven't shut down a company. I think maybe one of them did shut down or something, but I think that was a white anarchist. I'm not gonna lie to you. What else? We have not. I think that where we have been successful, perhaps, is shifting the consciousness around Palestine.
Right.
And I think that Black radicals have been integral in that, not least by lifting up the long, long history of Black and African and Palestinian solidarity. But we can't bust a grape in a fruit fight with steel-toe boots on. And I think we need to be serious about that. You see, Cabral says, claim no easy victories and tell no lies. But I think that we're actually lying to ourselves, right? I think that we are claiming easy victories. There was this post right at the end of the Biden administration. For a very short period of time, I think maybe Cuba was temporarily moved from the state-sponsored terrorism list. It was like 2 days. And there were organizations like, yes, come on, y'all. Like we have to be more discerning than that. We have to be more serious than that in our analysis. We can't claim easy victory. So I think that we are disorganized. And I say that with the utmost respect and acknowledgement. There are people organizing. You all are organizing. And so sometimes when we have this negative assessment of the state of our people, we're discounting people who've been organizing, who've been doing this for decades, right? I think that we're distracted. Like, I think that we're distracted people. And that feels like something that's not unique per se to this moment, but that's very, very, that's intensified in a way that feels unprecedented. We doing all kind of stuff that has nothing to do with anything liberatory, right? We just doing shit. Even when it comes to our so-called organizing, we're just doing shit, right? We're mobilizing a lot, but I think that mobilization without organization is very evident if we look at 2020 to now. Like, we're no more prepared now to stop pigs from murdering us than we were in 2020. And there was a huge mobilization. And again, I say this not to shit on the work that people are doing, but to be realistic. I think we have to be realistic about where we are. We're poor. I was trying to look up so destitute. I have 4 Ds, but we ain't got it. What is it? Pot to piss in, a window to throw out of, or ground for it to land on. But we're poor. And so I was trying to look up some economic statistics. And do you know they try to say that 46% of Black people are middle class?
Whatever that means.
Okay, they try to say that 12% of Black people are working class. And this is how we know we're lost in the sauce. This is how we know we have no class analysis whatsoever, right? But it's important. But the fact that people having a consciousness of themselves as middle class is very important. Why? Because the petty bourgeoisie, irrespective of race, is the most amenable to fascism. We know this historically. This is a historical, objective fact. And so if when we think about fascism, it's not just white Nazis. Fascism is a particular disposition of power. That includes Black people. That includes everybody, right? I'm going to read something later from the Dominican Republic, which is also fascistic in its treatment of Haitians and in general how the island is organized. And so I think that the fact that we're poor, but we don't have class consciousness, are not conscious of ourselves as proletariat or lumpen proletariat or sub-proletariat or shit, at least not bourgeois, right? We all know means production. And so I think that misconception goes back to the consciousness. Like we think that we're doing better than we are, which means that we're defending the accoutrements of that illusion, right? And that means that because the reason why the petty bourgeoisie is so reactionary is because they're always looking up through fear of being declassed, through fear of, and so they really hate the working class. And so the reaction is about trying to protect the little that you have, right? So, and I think that that's something that we need to be very mindful of. I don't think it's happenstance that so many of the faces of empire currently are Black. Or they were. Trump, get y'all ass out of here. But which to me isn't perhaps a net positive, because I don't think we need to be the face of this bullshit. And then the other thing that I'll say is that I think that we're deracinated. So we're not rooted. Right. So Baba AK just talked about that, how as organizers, we're not necessarily rooted in community. Right. There's people who don't even know their neighbors' names. Literally, you do not know who lives next to you. Right. I think there's been a decades-long attack on knowledge and knowledge production that is anti-imperialist and that is anti-capitalist and specifically socialist or communist. I think that persists. And so the question is, and again, this is not a roast, okay? This is for us to face these objective and subjective facts and then go from there, right? Because if we lie to ourselves about where we are, then we cannot have a clear sense of what we ought to do. But through all of this, people are organizing. People are joining organizations. More and more organizations are springing up and collaborating. And so I think that is a good thing. But I do think in a general sense, we lack an international perspective and international connections in ways that we had in previous moments. We lack a historical perspective in ways that make us inert, right? Or make us misrecognize what needs to be done. But what that means is that's the challenge before us, right? That's the challenge before us. And so I think it's a political challenge. It's an ethical challenge. It's an ethical challenge because we have to think about how are we relating to each other? How are we relating to this work? In our organizations, but then it's also what we call epistemological or epistemic problem. How are we even understanding the world, right? How are we justifying the beliefs and knowledge that we have about the world? And so I think that that's my preliminary sense of where we are. There's this question about there was a question about fascism somewhere, or Jim Crow. Do you want me to talk about that now, or is that coming
We
up later?
can. We'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow, hello. I'm not used to having people sitting behind my back. Y'all got my back? Cause I don't want no one to roll up on me. No, for real. Wow, I'm so overwhelmed with being here for great reasons. It feels so incredible to see so many familiar faces in the audience, including one of the people who's responsible for completely politicizing me when I was in college. I'm like emotional, like looking at you, Mickey. So it's kind of wild seeing you be here and not know that you would be here. So thank you so much from helping me to understand imperialism, capitalism, why Obama was bad, like, because I was on my little Buppy train, and you just gave me an opportunity to literally intern in your office, but also brought me into political struggle and consciousness. So thank you so much, so much. That is Mickey Bean. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Okay. Oh, so much to say. I hate that I'm going last. At first, I was like, I got time, but I don't have time. And I agree with all of these assessments. I think that we know about Black people's proximity to premature death. We know the social determinants of health. We know the eviction rates. We know the mass incarceration and the incarceration rates. We know the rates around police killings, though, all those things that we know. I think what I sometimes struggle with, in addition to naming like the obvious capitalist and imperialist forces that weigh on us, like I do think that people are poor. I think my mama knows that she's poor. My mom completely knows, right, that she's poor. I think that sometimes we need more help in articulating why people are poor, right, and in giving capitalists and capitalism faces and actors. And I don't think the Black left, sometimes we struggle to do that for our people. I've been thinking a lot about what enables the facilitation of capitalism and imperialism. And obviously it's the police and the military. If there was capitalism without police, we would just steal people's shit. We would just go get it. Like there would be no accumulation, no private property in the way that people have been able to accumulate without state violence and state-sponsored violence, which is why abolition must be an integral part of all of our struggles. Because whatever you decide to struggle around, the police is going to be on the opposite side of you if you truly care about freedom and justice and you want to experiment in liberation. And so it has to be an abolitionist struggle. I really also have been thinking about the seductive forces that facilitate capitalism and imperialism. And I'm just going to talk briefly about 4 because I know we're already running out of time. The first one Sharice actually was ending on was inclusion and representation. That the liberal diversity efforts have made it possible for Black people to be the faces of genocide and bureaucratic repression. The first wave of that I can at least recall is Black faces, Black students struggling for Black studies departments and Black professors, only for those deans and professors to then become the faces of repression of radical student activism. And now those Black faces are the face of repression for people who are fighting for Palestine, for a free Palestine. And so it's been wild to watch Black people become American in that way, to truly become American in that way. I think a second seductive force that helps to facilitate militarism, capitalism, and imperialism are the narratives around we built this country and therefore we are entitled to its fruits. We see that through Black buying power narratives and capitalist accumulation. We ask where our people are. Well, if we're not organizing them, Earn Your Leisure is organizing them, right? People who understand, well, we need to have what white people have, or these white boys, they know how to move the financial markets. You deserve to know that too, with lack of regard for the consequences of how to accumulate capital in the first place. Part of what it means to be a part of this narrative and this legacy and the seduction of we built this country helps to shape us towards xenophobic tendencies, right? Because then it's like, well, if I think that my job is being threatened by a foreigner, I don't understand that my wage labor is already being stolen by a capitalist country. So what fascism does is help to shift the face of stolen theft and stolen labor from capitalists to individuals. And that helps to create xenophobia in our communities. I think, and you ain't got no job. And you don't have no job. I think that tendency also, unfortunately, lends itself to anti-diasporic tendencies, where Black people in this country, out of fear of cultural production opportunities, sees ourselves, I'm speaking specifically around African Americans, sees it as a threat to be as a part of a diaspora because of opportunities. And so instead of fighting for things like free education, cooperative housing, we see ourselves in competition with people of African or Caribbean descent who then are taking slots for affirmative action. And it's like, why are we fighting over a few seats? We can have free education, right? So it's up to us to shift those narratives to change those conditions of struggle. I think the last two things, the fear of Black cultural production more than a fear of theft of Black labor. That is something.
Say that again.
The fear of theft of Black cultural production more than a fear of the theft of Black labor. And I didn't really understand how to articulate that until I saw Sinners. And I'm watching. I know. It was good. I know. It's all right. You can find me later and we can hug about it. When I realized a lot of the discourse around this film is like, wow, look at these culture vultures coming to steal our music. And I'm like, did y'all see the sharecroppers? Did y'all see the convict lease labor? So it's like we aren't able to profit from our music. We aren't able to profit from the things that we culturally produce. Never mind all the janitors who work at Sony, right? Who work at these multi-million, multi-conglomerate companies who steal our labor in all these other ways. It's just like, are there too many white rappers? And so we have to, there are too many white rappers, and we can't be so desperate over our culture production that we don't see that alongside the actual theft of our labor. And the last thing I would say, and I'm sweating a little bit, but rest is not resistance.
Thank you.
It is.
Thank you.
I think that is another seductive force that helps to facilitate capitalism and imperialism. This idea that, and it's mostly liberal, so it's not y'all, this is good. I think the idea that Black people have done enough and now it's time for other people to labor against fascism is so ridiculous when we know that Black people also bear the brunt of fascism. It's so ridiculous. We're not going to sleep ourselves out of capitalism. We're not going to rest ourselves out of imperialism. There is no amount of rest that is going to stop like our stolen time, our stolen energy, none of that. You know how? So that I think unfortunately I think the recognition of exhaustion is really important. And I don't think that we need to rest so that we can work or so that we can organize. We're humans, we're supposed to sleep. We need that, right? It's a part of our human makeup. But at the same time, the idea that it is a form of the individual rest is a form of resistance to a capitalist structure where capitalists sleep too. They rest a lot and they sleep on private planes. That's polluting the air that you're breathing in when you taking naps. So it cannot be enough. And so we have to figure out if we're going to meet our people who are being seduced by this logic of rest as resistance and we're done laboring. We have to understand to affirm that people are tired. But that also means that we need to make sure we share opportunities for each other to rest. But that doesn't mean that we stop organizing or think that it's other people's jobs to organize on our behalf.
Yeah, give it up. Okay, I'm gonna ask this next question, but I'm gonna muddle it a little bit with some other things because it was just so much that was said. I feel like I can't just read off a paper after that. But you had touched on the National Black Political Convention that was here in 1972. Not here in Indianapolis, but in the state, Indiana, Gary, Indiana. And I know CBS, always say, what is it? History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
Bingo.
Yes. So So I don't want to make the comparison that it's the exact same era of 72, but there are some interesting parallels I think to think about in terms of this next question. And there was a major decline of profit happening at the time, as there is currently in capitalism. There was the Vietnam War that was winding down, but still happening at the time. There was what people call a kind of right-wing backlash occurring at the time. This is Nixon getting in office. So when this convention occurred, I mean, it wasn't the same as how we are doing it today, but they were wrestling with these questions, similar to how, we're wrestling with Palestine, similar to how we're wrestling with capitalism being in this moment of crisis, similar to how we're wrestling with this right-wing upsurge, represented through the Republicans, although both parties are right-wing. So, when they came together, it's interesting little political or historical note. There were the integrationists. I think this is a little oversimplified, but this is how it's broken down throughout kind of the mainstream history of. There was the integrationists and the nationalists in this convention, and one of the biggest splits actually between those two groups was over Palestine. A lot of people don't know that it was over busing, whether Black people should be bused into neighborhoods, and it was a split over Palestine. And then I'm just trying to connect the points. The petty bourgeois that kind of comes out of that takes a lot of those points and becomes a Congressional Black Caucus. But they got rid of the Palestine point. But they have the Black Bill of Rights, I believe, or something to that nature. So we're dealing with a lot of that era kind of lays the ground for us in some ways. What we're dealing with this petty bourgeoisie class, but we're also dealing with this more reactionary aspect of it. So, like, what is your assessment? You've all kind of given your assessment of our state as a people, but you also talked about it's hard to go door to door. I actually used to work door to door. I hated that job. And people really do. Yeah, selling windows actually was a terrible job. Worst job I ever worked by far. It did teach you how to talk to people about anything, but it was a terrible job. But so I'm saying it is harder to do that. I mean, even when we do stuff at the Pendleton too, we do door-to-door stuff, and people will be responsive in some cases, but it's not the same. So the tactics of that era, I think sometimes people are always trying to bring back. There's nothing wrong with the food programs or any of that, but a lot of times we're referring back to that era. But how do we kind of update our strategy and the tactics as a so-called Black left? We're going to deal with the definitions of that tomorrow, so I'm not trying to get deep into the debates on that, but how do we deal with those how do we assess what we're doing as Black radicals, as a Black left, in today's time? What should our strategies and tactics be to deal with the conditions that you all described? And that's just an open question for anyone.
Well, one thing that did occur at that conference, that's often forgotten, is there was agreement. One thing that did pass was the Republic of New Africa, Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa at that time had something they called an anti-depression program, which was a program for reparations. And they not only got the convention to agree to it, but the Mississippi Loyalist delegation to the Democratic Convention, which was like Fannie Lou Hamer and them. Right, the Freedom Democratic Party had moved throughout the state to do its thing, so they supported and it was going to the Democratic Convention to be raised. One of the things that happened was one of the founders of New African People's Organization, Ahmed Obafemi, and another brother, Tariq Sombieta, they were arrested, and then it was put in the news. And I can remember this because I was like 18 at the time, and I drank the Kool-Aid. I didn't know no better. But they said that they were trying to assassinate George McGovern, which put a whole thing around stopping that effort and tarnishing the effort. But why I mention that is right now, there are 117 municipalities in the United States who have some sort of reparations initiative. But how many of the, how many of the Black left is engaged in that? And what might the reparations look like, or at least the proposals, if we're not engaged in the conversations? So this is one of the things that kind of concerns me, because I don't really see us there, organizing and challenging people around it. I said 117 municipalities and 4 states, Illinois, New York, California, of course, y'all know about, and Washington just recently joined the state of Washington. Of course, y'all know that Maryland was on the verge of having one, and the Negro governor there vetoed it. Yeah, Westmore. So that's something we might want to think about in terms of tactics. And again, it's not uniform perspectives on what that'll look like. So if people who say they have a left perspective, we're supposed to be representing Black working people, things of that nature, if we're engaged in a conversation, then what does, there are some mentioning Black capitalism. There are some people that have a more capitalist orientation to what reparations look like. Questions like self-determination get left off the table. These type of questions. So again, we have to think about that.
I think part of the problem that we're facing, I think as Black radicals, also I'm a student, so I think a lot of us are still learning, still trying to figure it out, trying to figure out what strategies work, is that we believe in radical politics, but we are trying to organize the masses. And almost by definition, being a radical means that you are in a minority, even if the politics themselves are just about fundamental basic human rights. There should be nothing radical about having public education that everybody can afford. That's free. There should be nothing radical about making sure that nobody has to go home at night and worry if they're going to be able to have food to eat when they go home, if they even have a home. We shouldn't be worried about the fact that I just read this amazing book. I'm about to tell y'all it's amazing. I can't even remember the name of it, but it's about the working homeless. Like, why do we even have a reality right now where people are working and cannot afford a roof over their heads? And so none of this stuff is radical, but for a lot of us over the last 40, 50 years, unfortunately, our government has targeted so much of this thinking, so much of this ideology, that we have a lot of work to do. And so for our people to have a liberated future, we have to believe in liberation. So many of our people believe in assimilation. So many of our people believe in integration. Our folks are not talking about liberation and radical anything. A lot of us are not thinking on those lines at all. So how do we get at our people's consciousness? That's been a common theme here. How do we transform our belief system? Because capitalism is a belief system. It's a value system as much as it's a political economy. It's a value and belief system that says the harder you work, the more you're going to get out of this capitalist system. It says that in order for you to benefit, you have to think individualistically. You have to focus on yourself. You have to be a hustler. Yeah, you have to be on grind time. What's the new thing? Morning grind, rise and grind. It's earn your leisure. There are thousands of folks. I'm from the bougie capital of the U.S., Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. I mean, we've got our radical organizations, but that's where our people are going, you know? So getting at liberation and a consciousness, again, requires us even believing in it in the first place. And so I think a major tactic is, how do we normalize? How do we make this work understandable and approachable for our people? And that's a large task. And because this is a cultural system, we have to continue investing. And I'm not saying this is not new for anybody here, because you all are doing the work. You're investing in cultural institutions, but I'm the product of cultural institutions. We need counter culture for a cultural system that has us believing that we are alienated, that has us believing that if we work with our people, that we just don't know how to get along. I see plenty of us get along. So it's about unlearning a lot of the things that we have done. And I think you have to get at that before you even build. We need to have a foundation of liberation before we can even build on that for our institutions.
Just to quickly like build on that. You know, if you've ever heard me talk, you've heard me say this, is we have to believe our own analysis. We have to believe our own analysis. And what does that mean? If it is that you say fascism is on the rise, or fascism is here, or we are in a neo-fascist epoch, why you talk about elections in 2028? Because do you know what fascism means? There are no elections. And I don't say that to be funny. I say that because we have a profound misalignment between what we say is happening and then what we're doing. Okay. And so for us, right, the people that we already, capitalism, we know this shit, right? Well, I feel like we don't talk about enough, and perhaps I just haven't heard it, which might be a good thing. There's three things. One is like underground. One is exile, and then one is self-defense. And I say that because if we're actually doing, if we're not doing like the non-reformist, whatever, right? Non-reformist reforms are great, but if we're not doing that, if we're doing revolutionary struggle, we have to be serious about what that means, right? So we'll talk about surveillance and the surveillance state, but what plans do we have? Because and these things are not abstractions, because that makes us think about what are our bail funds? How, if people are exiled either through incarceration or have to leave, how are we going to help them? And then if you go in exile, number one, there's a whole ethical question about that. Do we have a responsibility to stay and fight? But also, what's your responsibility once you're away, right? And so it's not to say that these are going to be the modal experiences. That is to say, it's not to say that most people are going to have to go underground or go in exile, whatever. But I've been reading a lot about the 1950s, just because to me that's a really it's a parallel moment. But they had to go underground, right? Because of what we now call RICO, right? Before they were just Smith Act cases. Those have morphed into RICO cases, right? Because of attacks by the police, because of attacks by the administration, all three branches of government. There's a whole spiel I could go on about three branches of government, but I will not do that. But one thing that I think we do need to, so you mentioned the 72 moment. Again, I've been looking at this 1947 to 1949, because that is a time when we think about McCarthyism, we think about primarily like the legislative branch. So we're thinking about all the laws and then the committees. But what's important is that it was actually Harry Truman, who was the president, Harry Truman, the FBI and the State Department, that actually started like the loyalty oaths, that actually kicked off the Red Scare. That was the executive branch. And these were through executive orders. We're making a parallel to today. We know that Trump has put out all of these executive orders, and some of them are not enforceable. But the question is, how are the other branches of government responding, number one? And number two, how are they creating particular types of conditions? And the other reason why Truman is important is because Truman was a liberal. So if we think about Truman, we got to think about Biden. We don't start with Trump. right? Because after Truman was Eisenhower, the conservative. So again, it's not to say that these are ones-to-ones, but if we're looking for historical parallels and the types of questions that Black radicals were asking, the types of strategies and tactics they were engaged in, the types of safeguards that they put in place, we can that's at least instructive, because sometimes we think we're reinventing the wheel, but we're not. Like, that's the history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes piece. And so I think that we have to have, perhaps privately within our organizations, whatever, but those things need to be taken seriously. Like, security needs to be taken seriously. Self-defense needs to be taken seriously. And self-defense is not just who got the guns. Self-defense is, what is our first aid? Do we have land? Do we have resources? Do we have training? Do we care for one another? Do we trust one another? All of those things are foundational to self-defense. And I think that those are the types of things that we need to be thinking about and focusing on. Us, right? Us who already have the analysis. Like, even we aren't doing this. And so and it's not if, it's when, because again, if we believe our own analysis, it's when the police come, right? It's when the military comes, because we talk about the militarization of the police. There's also what we could call a politicization of the military, meaning that the military is now performing oftentimes ordinary policing functions that are actually illegal. It's actually illegal for them to be, it's illegal for the CIA to operate domestically. It's illegal for the military to operate domestically. But more and more, the military and police are serving these policing functions, and the police are serving this militarized function. So this is already happening. This is actually where we are. And so for us, right, who are in the know, what are we doing? Are we actually having these serious conversations? It can't just always be about chasing the money, right? Because that's the like, not only the neoliberalization, but that's the, like, what is it, the non-profitization of, like, movement. It's like, what are we doing? Like, are we having these kind of serious practical conversations?
I think they said everything. I think that's it. I don't. The only one thing I actually will say, two things I actually will say, is that I think the tactics of feeding people are really important. I do think it's really, really important. You know, I'm from St. Louis, and okay, all right, okay. 2 weeks ago, a tornado swept through my hometown.
Yeah.
And when I think about the on-the-ground response, it's Black socialists and abolitionists who are feeding thousands of people every day, who are collecting money, redistributing, going to tarp people's houses, giving people flashlights and batteries and candles, right? It's like, that's the Action St. Louis for the people, like, for the culture. Like, those are the people who are doing that really important work. And really funny, on my way here, I talked to my mama, and she's angry because she knows someone whose home wasn't hit by the tornado, who's in the food line. And I was like, Mama, he's still hungry. Like, you know, so there are people who are going to get these resources because whether or not, you know, they were directly impacted by this tornado, they were directly impacted by capitalism and exploitation. If you stand in line for 4 hours to get a plate of food, you probably not trying to get over on the system, you know? And so trying to explain that, you know, to her, I think that's really important. And then I think canvassing is also really important. And it strikes me that over the years where I've been canvassing since I was 16 years old, like trying to stop affirmative action ban from passing in Missouri, and we won, but you know, anyway. But I think going from canvassing back then to now, when I canvass and everybody got a Ring camera. Yeah. And I'm talking to people through surveillance technology about an issue. And you know, in a place like DC, and I'm sure there are others who will give Black families cameras as long as cops can access the data. And how is this impacting my work on doors, right? It's like, it's so anti-democratic, this like intervention. So our tactics are really important because we have to connect with people. We have to be on doors. And it's like, well, now there's a surveillance culture that's recording us asking people where they stand on issues and to win them over to our campaigns. I think that's very, 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 very eerie and very scary and have to fight that. But then when Ring cameras are presented as solutions to safety, it's just like, oh, well, I would much rather see who's at my door because, like you said, I may come to the door with something. But I felt safer when there wasn't Ring cameras and I was on doors than now, right? Which is like a completely technological shift that we have to account for in our organizing. I think I have a friend who passed away a few months ago, and when she passed away, we were trying to find out who had a key to her place, who had a key to her apartment. And it turns out that her family was able to access her apartment because before she passed, she wrote letters to her undocumented friends. And in those letters were keys to her place. And she said, if anything happens after the inauguration, come to my place. And she bought a car and didn't tell anybody. And she bought a car so she can drive people out of the country, right? So when I think about people in my life who have deep, intentional commitments to care, not just posting solidarity, no like protect our undocumented, but like, here's the key to my house. I will get you out of here and I will sacrifice in order to make your life possible and much more safe. There's so many examples of that we should not talk about at a conference, right? It's a reason why Frederick Douglass said, I would tell y'all Negroes how to escape, but there's a lot of more people who need to get out of slavery. I don't want to expose the ways that they run away. And so sometimes when I'm at conferences and someone raised their hand and be like, what should we do about guns? And I'm like, at a conference? You
I was
gonna
being
ask a question
recorded?
about this at a conference?
Yeah.
I was like, right now? This is nice. This is live stream.
On
Are
a
you
live-
talking? Right. And so, yeah, I don't know who in here is an informant, but I'm sure someone is. I'm sure so. No, I'm for real. Because this is their job. No, I'm very serious. This is their job. And so if we're taking the tactics seriously, we have to take the levels of infiltration seriously. And so I'm grateful for the people who I know and who I don't know who do make those certain kinds of commitments to underground, to exile, to figuring out ways to keep people safe, who build alternative kids. You know, after the January 6th insurrection, DC went under essentially martial law for 2 weeks, and you have the National Guard just at parks in Black neighborhoods, like we was the ones scaling the buildings, you know? And so I think that the level of care that I'm watching people have to show up to stop deportations and detentions, the group chats that have emerged, that's like, yo, ICE is in my neighborhood. I know on Instagram, this is what people do. Should we meet up somewhere? I think it's incredible that people who I wouldn't think to be willing to mobilize in that way are mobilizing in that way. And it's like, how do we continue to protect people as they take risks and protect each other in those ways?
Yeah, thank you. We still got a little bit of time, but the way Kylie had this set was like round one, round two. So round two, I think the idea was getting an assessment of, we talked about our people, but what is the assessment of power? What is the assessment of these isms that we throw out? Like how should we understand, I guess, what the state of the empire is in this moment? Because again, we've talked about it, different historical precedents and how they help facilitate the moment that we're in. But how should we understand power in this given moment with the things that people are experiencing right now, and particularly our people, and not just here in the United States, but across the world? How do we understand it? Because even though history does rhyme, there are things that have changed. There are conditions that are very much different than they were today, particularly with technology. I mean, you were just saying with the Ring camera, and I remember again, door to door, I used to literally have to sell windows through a Ring camera. Hated that shit, but used to really have to do that. So I'm saying it is a different world that we're in. So like what should people, because we talked about what we need to do, but need to do against what? Like what are we facing? Like, can y'all give us an assessment of what we're facing, and how you see it? And that, again, open question.
I'll just start to think about, and I'll just talk about fascism, because fascism is, we have this kind of like ongoing debate, like, is the US fascist or not? is Israel fascist or not? The answer is perhaps yes, but why is fascism our model for evil?
Right. Right.
Why is fascism our model for ecological and global destruction when imperialism is right there? Fascism is just one enunciation of that. Fascism is a particular type of political administration of imperialism, a crisis of imperialism in particular. So that being said, I don't have a problem with calling things fascist or not fascist, right? But let's just think about, I know you said the world, but thinking about the United States. So like, there's different arguments about this. So there's the argument that the US is constitutively fascistic. And people point to things like, Nazi Germany learned a lot from Jim Crow laws to model the Nuremberg laws and the treatments of Black people and Native Americans here in the United States. That was the blueprint for Nuremberg. So we can go with this assessment that the US is like constitutively fascistic, right? That Jim Crow is like US fascism, that reservations are a species of a US fascistic practice. So we can go with that. Okay, what type of organizing do we then engage in based on that, right? What is to be done if the US is constitutively fascist? Then there's this question about like rising fascism, which is basically when people are conflating fascism and Trumpism. And it's an easy comparison to make because Trump is so overt. But if we understand that we're in a duopoly, we cannot reduce fascism to one particular individual, right? Oh, yeah. Nor an individual administration. But if it is that Trump represents the consolidation of fascism in the US, okay, so then what does that mean? That means if Trump is uniquely fascist, you should not be doing the same types of things that you are doing strategically that you are doing under a non-fascist, right? And so again, so I don't have a preference for one way or the other of understanding this, but you should know what your framework is. We should know what our framework is for how we're going to organize. And then there's this idea of neo-fascism. And neo-fascism is important because the neo modifier means that it's taking on the appearance or the characteristics of a previous epoch, but there's something new about it. And so if this is like a neo-fascism, it's sort of what is new about this particular era of fascism? Well, it's the decline of US empire. It's the crisis of liberalism. And so these are linked but separate things. The fall of empire has to do with like the cash grabs, the intense redistribution of wealth upwardly, the increased militarism to basically warehouse the reserve army of labor. Motherfuckers ain't got shit. Basically, like they're just gonna throw you in jail. There's no social safety net anymore, right? So there's that aspect. But then the crisis of liberalism is that is the hyper individualism and alienation, because US liberalism is set up vis-a-vis authoritarianism. People are like defending their freedom and liberty through things like rest and opting out at the cost of any sort of collective consciousness. And that's a sort of crisis of liberalism because everything else is considered to be illiberal, socialism or fascism. And so whatever it is that we want, however we want to contend with fascism or not with regard to the United States, I think that needs to then like that assessment that what needs to guide the what that is going to be the sort of challenge to that. And then I guess the last thing that I will say is the conjuncture, whether or not something is fascist to me is like irrelevant, but there is a conjuncture that you actually mentioned, and I have this right here: war, economic downturn, and white supremacist revanchism. That when these three things tend to come together, war, an economic downturn, and an increase in racial violence, those tend to be the things historically that people have pointed out as either harbingers of fascism or as a way to gauge if fascism is here. And we are in that moment. So there was there's the 50s moment, right? There's the post-World War I moment. There's an 1890s moment. So if we look at those three things together, I think that we can assess, okay, if the US isn't fascist right now, is doing things that are meant to reduce everybody, but racialized people in particular, to bare life, right? And so I think that is something that is happening domestically, but also abroad. So what the U.S. is doing to other countries internationally is now it's an asymptote. As the U.S. reaches this inexorable asymptote, as they say, those just means is falling down. All of those tactics then come back home, and so I think that that's what I've been thinking about in terms of assessing the international situation. And unfortunately, like, I'm for the fall of U.S. empire, but unfortunately, those of us who are historically dispossessed are going to bear the brunt of that. And so, like, what does that actually mean in like real material terms?
There's a term in a system that we haven't mentioned in relationship to the U.S. empire, and that's settler colonialism,
Yes.
which is the foundation of this thing. And I think, going back to what we said about consciousness, if we don't have a vision of that, if we think, because all of us was educated in this system, we all did. If you went to public school, unless you went to independent school or something, you were told that there's one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. So the vision we might have is this is just one thing that's supposed to last forever. And so we really have to reassess that. There are some of us who believe that it has to be broken up, that's the revolutionary solution, right? And in terms of our self-determination, that we need territory to have an independent socialist republic. That's one aspect of it. There are others. And of course, we're talking about indigenous First Nations having self-determination. We're talking about Puerto Rico being independent. We're talking about Hawaii. We're talking about where I grew up in California. That's part of northern Mexico. So when people talk about crossing the border, and so it just, we have to have a different vision. Y'all feel me? We can't have the same vision as Donald Trump and them and MAGA folks in terms of what the territory is and things of that nature. If we don't have that foundation, probably we're going to end up in the wrong place. And it's not really going to be a revolution. It's going to be something else. So, I just want to add that to the mix.
I think that is so important, so important. And thinking about the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, when I think about the assessment of many of our ancestors at that time, they assumed, like Fannie Lou Hamer just literally states in her autobiography, if you have not read it, I would highly recommend reading it. It's very, very short, and she uses cracker a lot, but it's a really good, it's really, really good, really good. Really good. But in there, there's a belief that if we can actually have a democratic attempt by seating, Black people from Mississippi, and she says it would destroy America.
Right.
It would destroy and disrupt what we think of this place, right? But now we know that empire just will absorb representation, right? So that can't be the same kind of tactic, right? When I see, I can't remember her name. Caitlin Greenridge is yes, right. The Black woman who we see vetoing. Linda Thomas, sorry. Different person. Yes, sorry. I was talking to her, but I was actually, yes, thank you. Who raises her hand to veto, right? All of the Security Council resolutions in order to, help to stop, right? So when I think about the United States relationship to the rest of the world, it's like, well, again, who are these faces? So that's one element. Another thing is that within the United States, it's 18,000 law enforcement agencies. Around the world, there's 800 military bases. There are 800 there's not even 800 countries. There are 800 United States military bases, the largest contributor to one of the largest contributors to climate change. So Black people here and all over the world are quite literally suffering through air, land, water because of militarism, on top of what militarism does. Because you look around what's happening with those bases, high rates of sexual assault, right? High rates of gender-based violence. You know, it's more exploitation of indigenous people in other parts of the world. I love this point that you were making earlier about the military becoming more police. This is interestingly why I have a problem with the notion of a third Reconstruction. Because when we actually study Reconstruction, one of the things that makes it possible is a dictatorship by the military, right? It's like, well, do we actually believe that a military or a National Guard can enable the liberation of Black people here, that like we attributed to, you know, post-Reconstruction? And is that possible in other parts of the world? It's like, well, no, absolutely not. And so our commitment to liberation has to be a global commitment to liberation, especially because the United States empire is global. It's a global empire, and it's becoming quite literally a galactic empire. No, Gayle King is on the is on space. No. And what does she say to feedback? She goes, "Have you been?" No, I have not been. Right? But these are frontiers of exploration that we have to think. I really like Dune. Dune is my jam. I know it has all these kind of problematics, but one of my favorite parts in Dune is when whatever the boy named Paul talks to his mom, and he's like, "Did you prepare for this?" And she's like, "The Bene Gesserit plans by the century." Which is such a bar when you really think about it. It's really a bar because so much of our organizers, like through, I don't know, a nonprofit cycle or through an election cycle. And it's like, well, they already are trying to figure out how to export trash, literally deport trash to the moon without trying to stop the amount of waste that's piling up on the shores of Ghana, that's piling up on the shores of Haiti, that's piling up on the shores in the world. They're just trying to add another place for it. It's like, we have to have plans by the century, like literally by that kind of imagination. So we not only do we have to go past borders and thinking about militaristic expansion, we have to go beyond borders of time and how we construct that. And so I think one of the greatest gifts that we have is to be inheritors of Black radical traditions. And where we are right now, it's like, if we decide to not continue to do the work, the people who are coming in 100 years are going to be behind. And I don't want that on me, right? The people who are going to be facing different kinds of repression, they're going to be behind if we don't do what we're required to do in this particular moment in the century of our lifetime. And so I am constantly thinking about the relationship between time and space, literally, and time and borders. And the last thing I'll say is that I think Nation Time was like the rallying cry, right? It's like, what do we think about Nation Time? And thinking about the United States as a settler colonial project, it's like, well, what is our relationship to borders? Because the moment you create a border, you create a foreigner. The moment you create a border, you create an enforcer. Because what's an unenforceable border? It's not a real border. And so I think that the people who are seduced by the United States being a settler, who are seduced by, well, how do I become a homeowner? How do I have more investment in this place? I think, yeah, if people are going to continue to invest in this place as a settler colonial project, it's going to continue to be a settler colonial project that must be protected by borders, by militarism, by the police. And so that is only going to extend with the life of the United States. So I agree, Sharice, that with the fall of the United States, and you know an empire is about to fall when they start banning and burning books, right? you know it's getting close. It's like, well, what are the best ways to have a just transition? So even in our attempts to resist and think about the future, how does it fall on us? But how do we know that we continue to struggle, right? How do we know that we continue to experiment? How do we get people out or get people prepared for the fall of that for the fall of the empire. And I don't think we can do that by relying on people in the United States alone.
Now, I wanted to say one, and just thinking it's global, it was one thing I think there's a ray of hope, and that April 30th, you know, when people came out around the world for Ibrahim Traoré, the people of Burkina Faso. But it says something else to me too. You know, and again, I'm thinking back, you mentioned 72, I'm thinking 74, I think it was, where there was a 6th Pan-African Congress. And during that time, and a lot of people don't talk about this anymore, but the movements from the Caribbean, their states, Guyana, Jamaica, they didn't allow the workers' movements, the people's movements to even go to be represented at that. And I think CLR James decided he wasn't going to go in solidarity with folks, right? And so we got, when we think about global movements in terms of Pan-Africanism, we got to look at the people and making sure, because that's who did, it wasn't the African Union that did that. They didn't call for solidarity, right? Because most of those are neo-colonial leaders, right? Yeah. And so we have to make sure when we build in Pan-Africanism, it has to be a revolutionary, it has to be a mass Pan-Africanism as well.
All right, all right. Okay, this is the last question. We're actually on time, even though we didn't start on time. We're on time so far, but you know how we get down. I guess the last question, I want to gear this a little bit. Obviously, the question is what is to be, we have here at the end is actually what is to be done is the last question leading into the panel tomorrow. But I want to ground that a little bit in asking that question in terms of what is to be done, what should be our primary task, objectives, strategies going forward. I'm going to ground that in the work that you all are involved in. Like we talked about at the beginning, being an organization, you know, being grounded in things. So from the perspective of the things that you're grounded in, that you're organizing with, the people that you struggle with, what is to be done?
Can I read something? So I have a statement that I want to read. I'm not going to answer this question because I'm going to read this statement. Also, I don't know, so it's a punt. But this is from, it's about the situation in the DR vis-a-vis Haitians. And so this is from Compas de la Diaspora, which is an anti-imperialist Dominican-led collective against all forms of exploitation in the island of Haiti and everywhere. So they have some people here, but they are not. So I just said I'm going to read their statement because I don't think they have a platform. So we would like to share a message about the state of exception and racial apartheid in the Dominican Republic, which has now reached a critical point. The Dominican state, through its repressive agencies such as the National Police, the Army, and the Immigration Enforcement Police, has long assured that Haitians, Dominicans of Haitian descent, and Black Dominicans live in a state of apartheid. While this is not new, the government has recently escalated its systematic assault on Black life in the country. As a response to growing anti-Haitian agitation by a strong fascist movement in the island, Abinader announced 15 anti-immigrant measures, which began on April 21st. Mass deportations, arbitrary detentions have ramped up, with over 119,000 people deported to Haiti in the first 4 months of this year alone. The most alarming of these measures has been the systematic deportation of Haitian migrant pregnant women being abducted from hospitals throughout the country. To this day, according to media reports, 900 Haitian women have been deported so far, including both pregnant and those who recently gave birth. This also includes Black Dominican women, whether of Haitian descent or not, who are currently still denationalized, along with an estimated 200,000 other Dominicans of Haitian descent. So there's 2 more paragraphs I'm going to read, but I just want to editorialize here. That's what they want to do to us. And I mean us, like radical people who care about liberation. They want to take away citizenship. And by the way, there's something called the McCarran Act of 1950 that actually permits denaturalization, which is just a step below people who are born here, raised here, whatever, also having their citizenship stripped away. And then they want to send you to El Salvador. So this matters, right? Okay, so 2 more paragraphs, small ones. One of the latest victims to this violent system sustained by the Abinader government has been Lordia Jean-Pierre, In the early morning on Friday, May 9th, Lourdia began feeling labor pains. However, due to the fear of being deported alongside her baby, she chose to stay home and try to deliver the baby with the very little means available to her. Unfortunately, she passed away, and the Dominican authorities deported her newborn baby with his father. We are circulating a petition denouncing her death as a state crime. The reality is that the supposed tropical paradise that millions of Americans and Europeans visit annually is in fact a nightmare for Black working class people. As such, we want to call on Black radical organizers to support the anti-racist and anti-imperialist struggle in the Dominican Republic, which is deeply interconnected with the new African struggle for liberation against the racist ruling classes in this hemisphere. We also urge Black people and people of conscience to avoid traveling to the DR unless strictly necessary.
Okay. So that is a big question. What is to be done? I'm hoping after this conference and workshops, more of us have more clarity around answering that. I think this is a lifelong journey for a lot of us. It's a multi-generational journey, trying to figure out what is to be done. I think if we look just historically from the last 40, 50 years, again, we're grounding this in our previous convenings and conferences. If we look at the 70s in Gary, we had a multitude of Black ideologies that were represented in that conference. You had the Black radicals, you had Leroy Jones, you had Jesse Jackson. But unfortunately, what came out of that conference is that a lot of Black political power ended up just looking like the white imperialists. Right. And so I think what we have to do, what we already know, is that we can't just be looking for Black power. No, I'm not rooting for everybody Black. I'm not rooting for a Black person that is sending missiles to kill thousands of babies and children and parents and mothers and fathers in Palestine. I'm not rooting for everybody Black who is encouraging our imperialist policies that is making sure that we continue to have a genocide in Sudan and the Darfur region, and ensuring that we are continuing to benefit from the minerals that are coming out of the continent so that we are enriched. I'm not rooting for Black people like that. I'm not rooting for Kamala Harris. Y'all saw the DNC. I was just it was boggling my mind, just the amount of pro-America propaganda. It's been touched on already. And I was like, this is chilling. I'm like, y'all not scared? It was just like, yes, we're gonna be the biggest military force in the country, most lethal. And then calling that Black joy. Black joy is not justice. And so we have, unfortunately, a lot of those Black people who benefited, again, coming out of the 70s and becoming the mayors and the city council people in the 80s and 90s. And I'm a benefactor of that. I only saw Black mayors in the city of Atlanta. The city of Atlanta also has the highest income inequality in the country. I've had Black dentists. I've only seen Black police chiefs. We have Cop City that opened its doors just recently with Black leadership. So I think we have to make sure that we focus. I know we're going to be talking about, I don't think it's that controversial to say we should have Black electoral power, but we need Black radical electoral power. So I have been a part of an organization. I'm not supposed to say this because I'm a journalist. I'm supposed to be objective and neutral, and I'm not supposed to organize as a journalist. But I don't think that you can be a Black person in this country and not work with some kind of mass liberation, some kind of mass struggle, some kind of collective organizing. We'll go crazy if we are not convening with our people, if we're not challenging what is happening to us on an individual basis. And so with groups like that, where we believe in Black radical electoral power, you have Black folks who are saying, you know what, I don't need to take money from developers. I don't need to be bribed by the mayor or the governor or the president just so I can get a few concessions. When you have Black radical power, if we're going to be in our cities anyway, if we're going to have people who are controlling our budgets, why are we not doing that work? Why are we not in there? So police budgets, military budgets, all that comes out of legislative decisions. We need to be the legislatures. We need to be the ones making the rules, making the laws, however we can. And so this is a global struggle, but we also have to figure out how to make it local. The last question was about thinking about our state of the world, thinking about Black people and what we are facing on an international level. But how do we make that local? How do we make these conversations applicable to people just on a day-to-day basis when they're not they're not only are they not thinking internationally, they're thinking more about being American, as Derica said. They're thinking more about how do I scrap and save the little crumbs that I have so that Haitians don't get it and that Caribbeans don't get it and I'm ADOS and so nobody else can have reparations but me. Financial literacy, have access to education. What about just free education? You know what I mean? So we have been, again, lured and seduced by a lot of that rhetoric to think individually. And so when you have Black radical people who are in power, who can provide materially for our people, I think the politics will also follow that. People will be more committed to the ideology when they see that we have institutions that are providing for them. And some of that work is through electoral politics. It's not a panacea, but it's a possibility.
I think we said a lot during the panel of what needs to be done. We talked about going to the people. And I think not only going to the people, but I'm reminded of that thing from Malcolm when he was in the Nation of Islam, and he hears people in the community say, well, y'all only do certain things if it affects the Muslims, right? And so the things that really affect our people on a grassroots level, we have to have the capacity to speak to. And so when we talk about things like earlier, we mentioned like the Amazon strike, things of that nature, where are Black radicals on these questions? Are we speaking to our people? And do we have their back and even helping them to build networks of support when they're dealing with those type of questions? We talked about self-defense, and we have to, regardless of what our organizational framework, we need to have networks where we're supporting one another. You know, on a self-defense level, dare I say what CBS said about, being able to network when things can't be seen. If we're serious, we have to think about that and not be so susceptible to shit ourselves as individuals and as organizations. We need to prepare on that level, but we got to prepare for a level of resistance. So there's some people of the opinion that, this guy got elected and a lot of white folks voted for him, so hey, just let them deal with it. No, but our people are being affected by this too. We can't just say, hey, let white folks deal with it and let them deal with it. No, we got to be prepared to fight. Other than that, besides what Malika said about radical Black electoral power, we got to build institutions outside of that. Yeah, she mentioned that she was in a New African Scout organization, which still exists. We got to prepare the next generation. A lot of times we just think as, radical organizers about college students, which is fine, but I remember when I was a kid, they was affecting us in junior high school. And I remember coming to school after school one day, and some brothers stopped me who today we would call thugs. And they was like, are you going to school tomorrow? I said, yeah, we're going to whoop your ass if you come to school tomorrow. It's Malcolm X's birthday. So somebody had organized these youngsters. I'm talking about my junior high school. So we got to begin to penetrate and deal with our youth. So, we still have. Oh, hell no. And I wasn't alone. Just a little tidbit. The next year, Compton Unified School District sent a letter to our parents and said we didn't have to go to school because so many people weren't going to school anyway. You know what I'm saying? It didn't take no legislation for that. You feel me? So that's real word, because the organizations the Malcolm X Foundation, the Panthers, even us organization, they were out there networking with people. You know what I'm saying? So we need to think on that level. We gotta go beyond what we've been doing, because it ain't enough. It ain't enough. So resistance on that level, we have to engage in networking on that level. We have to engage in, and we're gonna have to. One of the things we haven't talked about in fascism, a lot of times in fascism, united fronts become important. And so, but we have to think about in the context of united fronts. Sometimes in a united front, when you look at Vietnam, you look at China, you look at things, revolutionary movements advance. But other times, I look at your face. You know exactly what I'm going to say. What you say it again?
I said they be anti-radical as fuck.
And so we have to look at that. We have to look and examine that and think about, for us at this period of time, at this moment, how are we gonna get stronger because of it? How are we gonna get more stronger, or will we just compromise ourselves out of existence? I'll leave you with that. Free the land.
Oh, okay. Hi. So much was coming to me. I was looking for a pen and I forgot there's a laptop on my lap. So here's some of the thoughts that were coming up as you all were talking. What is to be done? Okay, I think that in the last, I don't know, like 4 to 5 years, that the left, the Black left in particular, we've been struggling around how to build countercultures online. And what I have witnessed is that there are a lot of people who realize that there is an influencer culture and think that we just need Black left influencers. And I'm nervous about that because Black left influencers have no accountability. They do not have. I think that there is a quiet pessimism about getting to mass. And so instead, we rely on people who have mass followings. That is not a base. A following is not a base. That is very important because a following is a marketplace. And people are going to say things to get them likes, follows, shares, subscriptions. That is individual capital that I don't see converted to movement power. So I think that we have to get clarity on the relationship between influencer culture and counterculture from the left. It's one of the things that came to me. Second thing that's coming up for me is what it means to popularize socialism and communism right now. And I've been thinking about this since I helped someone workshop. If y'all haven't checked out Garrett Felber's book on Martin Sostra, I highly recommend it. The Continuous Life. It's about Martin Sostra, a Black anarchist, and one of the reasons why why it has become markedly easier for prisoners to struggle while inside. He was a jailhouse lawyer. He was a yogi. I mean, just really an incredible life. But there's a part, Martin Sostra, Sostre.
It's by Garrett Felber. Did you
By
say
Garrett Felber.
Yeah, Garrett
Yes.
Felber. He white, but he cool.
He white, but yeah. He's white, but he's cool. In this book, in his interviews though with Martin at the end of his life, one thing that I found remarkable is that Martin talks about not being raised by parents who were political. And he says, my parents, they would go to, these social clubs. And when Garrett started researching the social clubs were communist workers' social clubs where people were playing cards. And it was named after Puerto Rican revolutionaries, actually the youngest son of one of the founders of the Dominican Republic, who ends up getting assassinated in Mexico, either by the communists who were afraid he was becoming more anarchist. But here you have these communist social clubs in Harlem where he doesn't even recognize them as political spaces, because there were spaces where people were able to gather. So I've been thinking a lot about Black social communist clubs, Black social socialist clubs, because to be honest, a lot of our movements have shifted because of philanthropy to being mostly staff-driven organizations. So people have more staff than they have members, or they have more staff than they have volunteers. And that makes, no, seriously, that makes a lot of sense because a lot of people want stability and are also trying to organize and also trying to pay rent. But it also creates a dynamic where our movement organizations and our political homes become sites for everything. Dating, social, like sociality, struggle, food, employment. And I think we have to be really mindful of those connections because once you enter a breakup, the whole organization is in crisis. And so it's like, well, is it possible for us to have Black social clubs, communist social clubs, where people can gather and it's connected to a political struggle or connected to a political organization, but it's not the sole source of people's lives? So I've been thinking a lot about that. And the last thing I'll say is that I feel very, very, very lucky that I have a group of people who I dream with, who I share space with, who, you know, hold me accountable, who I help hold accountable. And after October 7th, we were thinking about, well, when I'm looking at these marches and I'm seeing it's not a lot of Black people at these marches. And we started thinking about, well, we know Black people's relationship to like Palestinian liberation. We know, like, we know that history, we know that trajectory. And as we started talking to figure out, well, how do we get Black people, like, where are our people right now? One thing that we were getting feedback on is that these marches are not in Black communities. They're at the White House, they're in Times Square, they're at all these other places that where we consider sites of power. And so me, Niall, a few other people, we started organizing this cultural event called Dear Gaza. And we started doing love notes on Black Palestinian solidarity. And we decided to do them in Black neighborhoods. And those events were Black. It's like, oh yeah, go to where the people are. And if you already live where people are, that's easier because then you don't have to go, right? You're already there. But what we heard and what we saw is that people were their consciousness was being raised. And we got into weird fights over, is it awkward to have falafel and fried chicken? That feel a little racist. But the Black people was like, what's gonna be the menu? So we had to figure out how to make sure we had culturally appropriate food, right? So we fed people. And instead of having traditional panels, we had, you know, people read letters. So you were getting love letters, letters to parents, letters to racist Arab store owners who were like, man, I don't know how to connect with this person and I feel mistreated, but I still think what's happening is wrong. You know, we have William Patterson's daughter come to Harlem and okay, Mary Louise is there. And we asking people, how long have you been in the fight for justice in Palestine? You know, raise your hand if it's been 3 weeks. You know, you see half the room go up. Raise your hand if it's been 3 years, 30 years. And her hand kept going up, kept going up, kept going up. And you have someone like Mary Louise Patterson there with these young Palestinian students from Columbia who made sure to include as a part of their demands for their encampment that Columbia stop encroaching into Harlem. So it's like all of those connections are possible. Like they are truly, truly, truly possible. And I think that we can rely on some of those relationships that we saw. You know, in Chicago, whenever people were about to get eviction and convicted in Cabrini Green, you know what they would say? Go get the Reds. Because the communists were the peoples who were doing what? Eviction defense. And so it's like we have to have cultural relationships where people understand that we still have political orientation. And that's why I think what the work that Action St. Louis and For the Culture are doing is so, so, so important. And that mutual aid work, that community work, that culture building work. And I think it's all possible. I just think we need more of it.
One more thing. We cannot forget. I want to challenge. I won't say not forget. I want to challenge everybody to be engaged in the work for freeing our political prisoners, prisoners of war, and supporting our exiles as well. Because we can't talk about moving forward and you done left soldiers behind. So you know that's. We want to invite everybody to engage in that work as well.
For sure, for sure. All right. Give it up for this panel again, please, please.
Now it's time for Q&A.
So we'll be here tomorrow. Registration begins at 8 in the morning. We will have you at the hotels for the conference. The transportation will begin tonight. Transportation, I believe, will be here at 8 for those who need to go back to the hotel, just running back some logistics. We will start our first plenary at 10. That will be the What is to be done panel. I'm not going to go over the entire schedule because I already did that for you. But then we're going to have the workshops, then we'll have lunch, have another series of workshops, and then we'll have dinner. So hope to see y'all here. We'll also have a film screening too, but hope to see y'all here. But y'all have a great night. Definitely.
Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Oh, 9. Oh, registration opens at 9 a.m. tomorrow. A couple of quick announcements before you go in addition. One is for folks with young people. We brought the young people back to you, so you don't have to go to the room, so they're in the back. 2 is it's very, very important for folks to be here tomorrow on time because we have a special statement from Lamia Abu-Jamal. Okay? So if you're late for that statement, it's not going to be repeated, right? So we want you to be here for that statement tomorrow when you show up. You want to add anything or you're good? So we want to thank y'all for coming out. We're going to continue the discussion tomorrow. There's going to be workshops and we're going to be forward with revolution, aren't we? Let's go. Yeah.